You're not thinking about the failure. You're thinking about the moment right after it, the silence, the look on their face, the way your stomach dropped before anyone even said anything. And now it's night, and you're here again, replaying it like it's a scene you're trying to edit. If I had said this instead, if I had prepared more, if I wasn't so careless, you don't even notice when the replay turns into a trial. You're the defendant, you're the prosecutor, you're the jury, and somehow you're always guilty. What hurts isn't just what happened. It's what it means, or at least what you think it means. That maybe you're not as capable as you thought, that maybe everyone saw something you were trying to hide, that maybe this wasn't a mistake, maybe it was exposure. And that thought sticks. It follows you into the shower, into your commute, into conversations that have nothing to do with it. You nod while someone's talking, but in your head, you're somewhere else, back there, in that moment. You zoom into details no one else remembers. The tone of your voice, the half-second pause, the email you should have double-checked. It feels important to analyze it. Like if you study it enough, you'll prevent it from ever happening again. But the more you analyze, the heavier it gets. Failure during the day feels sharp. Failure at night feels personal. Because at night there's no distraction, no noise, just you. And the voice that asks, why did you think you could do that? You try to answer it. You build arguments, you list your past wins. But the voice doesn't care. It just replays the loss and adds commentary. You start imagining future versions of yourself, the one who never recovers, the one who becomes that person who almost made it, the one people feel slightly sorry for. It's strange. Nothing new has happened. But your mind is already writing the next 5 years. And none of them end well. You tell yourself you're just being realistic. But this doesn't feel realistic. It feels catastrophic. Like one crack means the whole structure is weak. You don't just fail at something. You become someone who fails. That shift is subtle, but it's heavy. You start questioning things you were confident about last week, your decisions, your instincts, your ability to read situations. You scroll through your messages, looking for signs you missed, hints that this was coming. You reread conversations, searching for hidden disappointment. Most of the time it's not there, but your mind can create it anyway. It fills in the blanks. It edits people's expressions. It adds subtext to neutral words. And the worst part, it all feels believable. You imagine running into someone who knows, you picture the awkward small talk, the polite smile. The invisible label you think is now attached to you. You don't want to show your face, not because anyone said anything, but because you said something to yourself. You said, you should have known better. And that sentence keeps echoing. There's something cruel about how your brain handles failure. It doesn't just show you what happened. It shows you what could have happened. The perfect version. The version where you nailed it, where everyone was impressed, where you walked away proud. And now you compare reality to a fantasy. Of course, reality loses. You start thinking about the moment before it went wrong. That tiny turning point, if I had chosen differently, if I had waited, if I had trusted my first instinct. You zoom into that fork in the road. Like you can go back and pick another path, but you can't. And that helplessness, that's what keeps you awake. You feel like you betrayed your own potential, like you let yourself down. That's harder than disappointing anyone else because you were rooting for you, quietly, deeply, and now it feels like you watched yourself trip. And no one caught you, so you try to make sense of it. You dissect your personality. Maybe I'm too impulsive. Maybe I'm too slow. Maybe I care too much. Maybe I don't care enough. You swing between extremes, all or nothing. Either you're capable, or you're a fraud. There's no middle ground at 2 a.m. You remember other failures. Ones you thought you'd moved on from. They resurface like your mind is building a case. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C. See? It says, this is a pattern. And patterns feel permanent. You start imagining future risks. You think, maybe I shouldn't try that again. Maybe I should stay where it's safe. Your goals. Lower your expectations. If you don't reach high, you can't fall far. It sounds logical, it sounds protective, but something in you resists it. Because despite everything, you still want more. And that's confusing. How can you want to try again when trying is what hurt you? You feel embarrassed about how much this affects you. Other people move on faster. At least it seems that way. They laugh it off. They post something new. They try again. And you're still here. Rewinding, analyzing, reimagining. You tell yourself you're being dramatic, but it doesn't feel dramatic. It feels real. It feels like your chest tightening when you think about it. It feels like your stomach dropping when someone brings it up casually. It feels like your heart racing over a memory. Your body reacts like it's happening again. Failure becomes a loop, not an event. A loop. You start having imaginary conversations. Someone asks, "What happened?" You rehearse your answer. You try to sound calm, detached. You practice humility. You practice confidence. You edit your tone. You anticipate follow-up questions. By the time the real conversation happens, if it ever does, you're exhausted. And sometimes it never even comes up. All that rehearsal for nothing, but it didn't feel like nothing. It felt necessary because somewhere deep down you think you need to control the narrative. If you can explain it perfectly, maybe it won't define you, but the truth is, you're not trying to convince them. You're trying to convince yourself that this was situational, not personal, that this was circumstantial, not evident. But your mind keeps slipping. It keeps saying, what if this is who you are? That question lingers, quiet, heavy. You look at your past confidence and wonder if it was delusion. You question your ambition. Was I aiming too high? Was I naive? Should I have known my limits? Limits. That word feels sharp, like a ceiling lowering. You start noticing every small mistake you make afterward, tiny things, typos, awkward pauses, late replies. They all feel connected now, like proof. See? Your mind whispers, you haven't changed. You carry this invisible weight into new situations. You hesitate more. You second guess faster. You prepare longer, but somehow feel less ready. It's exhausting to be inside a brain that won't let you rest, even when nothing is happening, especially when nothing is happening, because silence gives it space. And space turns into analysis. Analysis turns into self-doubt. Self-doubt turns into identity. And identity is hard to shake. You wonder what it would feel like to just let it go. To have the memory come up and not feel your chest tighten. To think about it and shrug. But that feels dishonest. Like you'd be ignoring something important. So you hold on to it. As if the pain is proof that you care. As if replaying it is respect for the opportunity you lost. There's something noble about suffering over it. At least that's what it feels like. If you're this affected, it must have mattered. And if it mattered, then maybe you're not careless. Maybe you're invested. But investment without control feels terrifying. You want guarantees now, before you try again. You want certainty before you risk again. But life doesn't offer that. And that's what makes this so hard. You weren't just trying, you were hoping. And hope is vulnerable. When it collapses, it's loud, even if no one else hears it. You lie there and imagine a version of you who handles failure effortlessly, who shrugs and says it happens, who sleeps peacefully the same night. You almost resent that version because you don't know how to become them. You think maybe something is wrong with you. Maybe you feel too deeply. Maybe you think too much. Maybe you attach too much meaning to outcomes. But what if the reason it hurts this much is because you dared to care this much? What if the replay isn't weakness, but evidence of how seriously you take your life? You don't fail casually. You attempt intentionally. That's why it echoes. You're not haunted by small things. You're haunted by things that mattered. And maybe that says something beautiful about you. Even if it doesn't feel beautiful right now. You're not broken because you're affected. You're human. And humans don't just process events. They process meaning. You're trying to understand what this means about you. About your future. About your worth. That's heavy work. No wonder you're tired. But it's something quiet, something you don't notice in the middle of the loop. You're still here. You're still thinking, still reflecting, still caring. The part of you that feels embarrassed is the same part that wants to grow. The part that replays is the part that wants to improve. It's not your enemy. It's just loud and scared. Scared that this will happen again. Scared the next time will hurt more. Scared that you'll confirm your worst fear about yourself. It over-prepares, over-analyzes, overthinks. Not to punish you, but to protect you. It just doesn't know when to stop. And maybe tonight, you don't need to solve it. You don't need to rewrite the scene perfectly. You don't need to decide what it means about your entire future. Maybe it was just a moment. A painful one. An uncomfortable one. But still, a moment, not a prophecy, not a label, not a life sentence, just a moment. You can let it exist without turning it into an identity. You can let it hurt without turning it into a verdict. Right now, in this quiet, notice something. You survived it. The worst already happened. The thing you feared. The embarrassment. The disappointment. And you're still breathing. Still here. Still capable of wanting more. That counts for something. Even if no one applauds it. Even if no one sees it. You're allowed to feel the sting without building a story around it. You're allowed to rest without finishing the analysis. The night doesn't need your conclusions. It just holds your thoughts. And eventually, they soften. Not because you force them to, but because they get tired too, just like you. You don't have to prove anything right now. Not to them, not to yourself. The failure happened. Yes, but it didn't take your depth. It didn't take your desire. It didn't take your ability to try again. That part is still quietly alive in you. Even if it's scared, even if it's bruised, you are more than your worst moment. Even if your mind hasn't caught up to that yet. Tonight, you don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to promise you'll do better. You don't need to rehearse redemption. You can just lie here and let the memory be a memory. Let the future be unwritten. Let yourself be unfinished. And maybe that's not failure. Maybe that's just being in the middle of your story, not the end, just the middle. And middles are messy, but they're not final. Close your eyes, not to escape it, but to stop interrogating it. You tried. It hurt. You're still here for tonight. That's enough.